Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Mon nom est Justin Weiss, je suis le président du Forum de Paris sur la paix. Et c'est mon honneur aujourd'hui de présider, de modérer ce premier panel qui s'appelle, est-ce qu'on peut apporter un casque pour le vice-président? Le dialogue des continents sur la gouvernance globale. Le système international, en effet, ne va pas bien. Un siècle après la Première Guerre mondiale et les malheurs qu'elle a apportés, à nouveau, le système international est instable. L'ONU, et en particulier le Conseil de sécurité, est souvent bloqué. Nous ne gagnons pas la guerre contre le changement climatique en dépit des efforts de ces dernières années. Internet reste une jungle où les hackers et les propagandistes font la loi et nous ne parvenons pas à gagner la guerre du développement. Autrement dit, il reste beaucoup de choses à faire pour organiser le monde, pour le rendre plus efficace et pour faire face aux défis dont on sait qu'un seul pays ne peut pas les résoudre. Le changement climatique, la disparition de la biodiversité, la gouvernance de l'Internet, mais aussi la gouvernance des données, l'évasion fiscale et tellement d'autres problèmes qui nécessitent la conjonction des efforts de tous. Nous avons donc souhaité, pour ce premier forum de Paris sur la paix, demander à 4 représentants des différents continents de venir pour échanger sur l'état de ce système international, sur l'état du multilatéralisme et sur les remèdes qu'on peut apporter à la crise qu'il connaît aujourd'hui. Pour cela, je vais demander à ces 4 dignitaires de venir et de venir prendre leur siège et d'entrer en scène. Could you please join me? Oui, Madame Espinosa. Monsieur Faki. Ici. Monsieur Naidou. Non, Monsieur Naidou, pardon, ici. Et Monsieur Loffen, merci. Alors, je souhaiterais d'abord les présenter, ces chefs d'État ou d'organisations internationales qui ont accepté de nous rejoindre, en commençant par Madame Espinosa. Madame Espinosa est la présidente de la 73e session de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies. Auparavant, elle avait servi son pays, l'Équateur, comme ministre des Affaires étrangères à 2 occasions. Elle avait également servi son pays comme représentante permanente aux Nations unies à Genève et à New York et était également ministre de la Défense et de l'Héritage culturel. Bienvenue. Premier ministre Loffen, and I will switch to English to present you, has been serving as Prime Minister of Sweden since 2014. Since 2012, he's also the leader of the Social Democratic Party. Following the general elections, the last general elections, Prime Minister Loffen is serving as acting Prime Minister until the formation of a new government. He's a trained welder and has been a trade union leader. And he's the founding father of a project, of a solution that we are presenting here in the space of solutions called the Global Deal. And we're very happy to welcome that project and try to advance it here at the Paris Peace Forum this year. Here on my left, Moussa Faki, et je retourne cette fois vers le français puisque c'est sa langue d'usage, est le président de la Commission de l'Union africaine depuis l'an dernier, depuis 2017. C'est un spécialiste de droit constitutionnel et il a occupé plusieurs positions importantes au sein du gouvernement tchadien, notamment ministre des Affaires étrangères et Premier ministre. Il a notamment été dans une autre fonction multilatérale importante qui est la présidence du Conseil de sécurité des Nations unies en décembre 2015. Enfin, laissez-moi vous présenter le vice-président, and I will switch to English again, Venkaiah Naidu, who has been the Vice President of India since August of last year, 2017. He previously served as Minister of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, Urban Development and Information and Broadcasting under the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He's a member of the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and has held prominent roles within that party. So welcome to the four of you. We're delighted you could join and have this conversation. I will start by asking each of you a question, and then we will get into a conversation. Je commencerai avec vous, Madame Espinosa, en profitant de la perspective particulière qui est la vôtre à la tête de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies. Quelle est votre évaluation, votre bilan de l'état actuel du multilatéralisme?
Bon, d'abord, bon après-midi. Je ne sais pas si le micro marche. Bon, d'abord, je suis très contente d'être ici. Je remercie les organisateurs de ce premier forum de la paix. Et je remercie bien sûr l'invitation du président de la République française, Emmanuel Macron, pour son invitation. Et je me suis dit, je suis très contente d'être la seule femme au panel ici. Autrement, j'aurais pas pu m'asseoir ici parce que je fais partie d'un réseau mondial qui s'appelle Gender Champions. Et on a un accord qu'on ne peut pas participer de panel où il n'y a pas une femme au moins. Alors je suis ravie d'être la femme ici assise et de représenter non pas seulement les femmes de l'Amérique latine et du Caraïbe, mais aussi l'Assemblée générale de l'ONU, disons les 193 pays qui font partie de l'ONU. Alors, je crois que nous sommes là pour commémorer le centenaire de l'armistice. Et cette grande guerre a provoqué un changement profond de la politique mondiale. On a écouté des merveilleux discours pendant toute la journée. Et c'est justement l'armistice de 1918 qui a lancé un processus politique pour négocier les conditions de la paix. Et je crois que ça, c'est quelque chose qui fait qu'on puisse se retrouver aujourd'hui. Et je pense qu'ensuite, l'ONU s'est imposée comme l'expression la plus puissante du multilatéralisme. Je crois que ça, c'est clair. Mais il est évident qu'aujourd'hui, elle est aussi face à des grands défis. Le français n'est pas ma langue de travail, alors je m'excuse, je fais tout un effort pour aussi saluer, célébrer la francophonie.
Merci.
De cette façon. Bon, et je disais que le multilatéralisme et l'ONU font face à des grands défis. C'était votre question. Et le monde éprouve des problèmes très complexes, y compris des problèmes de gouvernance, l'ascension des velléités de repli et d'isolation qui sont exacerbées par la montée des nationalismes, de la xénophobie et de la polarisation. La vélocité avec laquelle les menaces à la paix et au développement se transforment présente également des défis lourds pour le multilatéralisme et j'en suis une témoigne de ce qui se passe chaque jour à l'ONU lorsqu'on doit prendre des décisions pour réguler et normer le droit international. C'est ce que l'Assemblée générale, c'est le Parlement de l'humanité. Et d'une façon ou d'une autre, c'est là où opère le multilatéralisme chaque jour. Et c'est le mécanisme, l'ONU, c'est l'instrument, le mécanisme pour régler les relations entre les États et d'être au service de tous et de toutes. Et en septembre dernier, le secrétaire général a bien dit, lors du débat de haut niveau de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies, et qui d'ailleurs demeure l'instance la plus représentative et démocratique au monde, l'immense majorité de leaders mondiaux ont défendu le multilatéralisme. 154 fois, le mot multilatéralisme a été répété par les chefs de gouvernement et d'État. Et j'ai été particulièrement, il faut dire, séduite par l'intervention du président Macron qui a fait un plaidoyer transcendant en faveur du dialogue et du système multilatéral dans la résolution des crises mondiales. Ne l'oublions jamais, le multilatéralisme n'est pas une menace à la souveraineté des États, mais au contraire, et tout au contraire, et je veux souligner ceci, il renforce la capacité des États de prendre des décisions informées et pour le bénéfice de la communauté internationale. Et c'est l'ONU, justement, qui permet aux peuples du monde de résoudre les défis qu'aucun État, même le plus puissant, ne pourrait le faire tout seul. Par exemple, face au terrorisme, au crime international organisé, au changement climatique, aux migrations, aux problèmes des réfugiés, de la faim, de la pauvreté, de l'inégalité. Je crois que c'est clair que la seule réponse peut venir de l'action collective et des responsabilités partagées de la communauté internationale. L'égalité souveraine entre les États est donc basée fondamentalement dans les principes de la Charte des Nations Unies. C'est pour cela que le multilatéralisme n'est pas seulement le moyen le plus efficace pour la paix et le développement durable, mais c'est aussi la seule voie. C'est ce qu'on a la meilleure construction que nous avons fait après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale pour faire face à des questions, à des problèmes, à des challenges qui atteignent à toute l'humanité. Pour cela, en usant les mots de président Macron de ce matin, il nous faut vouloir, il nous faut décider et agir collectivement sous le cadre de la meilleure et la plus grande maison du multilatéralisme qui sont les Nations Unies. Ce n'est pas une question facile, il faut le dire, mais je crois que vraiment, il faut faire face à un moment difficile pour le multilatéralisme, agir rapidement, renforcer l'institution que nous avons et mettre le poids politique nécessaire pour faire face aux challenges que nous vivons aujourd'hui. Et je serai ravie de répondre aux questions après l'intervention de mes chers collègues, à qui je salue aussi. Excellence, je vous salue. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Monsieur le Président de la Commission de l'Union africaine, le constat dressé par la présidente de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies renforce ce qu'a dit le secrétaire général des Nations unies tout à l'heure, et un constat assez sombre. Est-ce que vous le partagez et que peut-on faire pour revivifier ce multilatéralisme et pour être sûr que nous conservions des règles et des institutions, en particulier l'ONU, qui servent l'humanité tout entière?
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais vous remercier également de m'avoir invité à prendre part à ces forums et surtout à ces panels. Je voudrais d'entrée de jeu dire, pour imparfait qu'il soit, le système multilatéral est une nécessité. Et il est davantage pour un continent comme le continent africain. La question que vous me posez n'est pas simple. Il n'y a pas de réponse unique et définitive. Il faut rappeler que le multilatéralisme actuel est la conséquence directe de la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Les règles ont été conçues, édictées, parfois même imposées à d'autres par ceux qui ont tenu le haut du pavé et qui continuent à les tenir. Ça, c'est une réalité et il faut une nécessaire adaptation des règles au nouveau contexte. Deuxièmement, il y a la question de la gestion politique. Il s'agit de la justice politique, de la justice sur le plan économique. Les règles multilatérales ne sont pas justes et même si elles sont nécessaires, elles nécessitent une adaptation. Troisièmement, la question d'une nouvelle gestion du maintien de la paix. Le maintien de la paix est du ressort du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies, mais il y a de nouvelles formes de menaces à la paix et à la stabilité qui nécessitent une adaptation du dispositif ancien. Nous le vivons en Afrique, qui eût cru, au vu au sud de tout le monde. En 1914, ce qui s'est passé au Rwanda, un génocide où en 100 jours, plus d'1 million de personnes ont été exterminées. Les Nations Unies sont là, les mécanismes du maintien de la paix sont là, ça interroge. Deuxièmement, les nouvelles menaces comme le terrorisme, qui malheureusement ont également atteint le continent africain.
Is there an issue here? Do you think that one of the ways to improve the state of multilateralism is to adapt these institutions, and do emerging powers such as India and others recognize themselves in the current multilateral institutions?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to compliment Paris Peace Forum for organizing this interaction. And second, I also would like to congratulate the French President, Emmanuel Macron, for taking initiative to organize this international congregation on the occasion of completion of 100 years of First World War, so that we can take lessons and then move forward. Having said that, I totally agree, if you want to strengthen multilateralism, you need to strengthen the institutions. You need to further democratize them, or even the United Nations Security Council. In the present situation, it's not well represented. So keeping that in mind, United Nations Security Council, even other international forums, they have to be enlarged further. They have to be democratized further. India, for example, is such a huge country, 17% of the population of the world, and you are not there. So how do you call it as a multilateralism? So consultation should be wider, should be deeper, should be meaningful. For that, democratization and representing the various sectors and various groups adequately is the need of the hour. That's my feeling. And multilateralism as a principle, every country must accept this. After all, we are living in a situation where we are interdependent. We can't live in isolation, and you cannot have a consolation living in isolation. So you have to depend on others. And so others also should be able to really take advantage of your help and then extend the help they can. I can tell you, my friends, according to our Indian philosophy, share and care is the core of Indian philosophy. And we always call Vasudaika Kutumbakam. The entire universe is one family. If that feeling is developed, then our task will become easier. Because we have challenges, we have problems, we have economic inequalities, we have poverty, we have illiteracy, we have gender discrimination here and there. With all these challenges, the only answer is, once you believe that the entire universe is one family and we should help each other, and then it is our duty to take care of others. If that attitudinal change, philosophical change comes in everybody, that will be more useful in bringing a meaningful solution to this problem. And secondly, structural changes. More and more democratization of the process of these institutions. That's the need of the hour. I agree with what Palji has said, that about the need to further strengthen and democratize these institutions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. So, if I want to summarize at this point, we say that multilateralism was sort of a common public good of humanity, and the UN in particular. We also agreed, in particular the last two speakers, that it needed to be reformed and adapted to the current realities. Now, my question would be for Prime Minister Löfven of Sweden now. In Europe and elsewhere, one of the threats, I would say, on multilateralism really has to do with the reassertion of sovereignty. It's true for the European Union project. It's true for multilateralism in general. It seems that we live in a world that where more and more people are asserting their sovereignty and their, I would say, national interest versus their collective interest. The two have always had to be balanced, but it seems that now the reassertion of sovereignty is an issue. Do you share that view? Is that a problem? And what is your view on this?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to this distinguished panel. I appreciate it a lot. I would also like to commend President Macron and France for taking this opportunity when we celebrate the end of World War I to discuss these important issues. I think it's very important. This is something we should do more, and I'll get back to that. Yes, I am concerned. I am concerned about the development within the European Union. Obviously, we have one country that wants to leave the European Union. It's their decision, so to speak. So I respect that, but it shows that there is something wrong. We have also have had almost 4-year long discussion on how to handle migration. Can we do this together? We need to do it together, in my view, but we haven't reached an agreement so far. One of the arguments is that we need to take care of our own country. That is what we hear we need to do. So we have growing nationalism, protectionism, isolationism. We can see that. And what is, in my view, is dangerous that in these days, as was mentioned also earlier today in the opening of this forum, was that, I mean, in a global economy, we are interconnected more than ever. We have challenges that are common, migration, we have terrorism, we have the climate, and all these are challenges, some opportunities as well, that are multilateral. So the answer must be multilateral, otherwise we will be lost. Now, we have an infrastructure, and I'll be the first to support the United Nations is our global organization #1. We need to remember that. We need to not only protect the organization, but develop it. And I do commend also the Secretary General Guterres and our reorganization and his attempt to revitalize the United Nations. But we also have ILO, we have WTO, and we have all these institutions that we need to of course, develop, because you have a clear, I mean, your perspective is valid. Much of the rules are too old, so we need to develop those, but let's take care and develop our global infrastructure. We have a Paris Agreement. We have the Agenda 2030. So somewhere we agree that we need a common path to develop our common world. And we need to continue that, seek like-minded, because obviously it is also challenge these agreements. We have the joint comprehensive plan of action, which we need to protect and make sure, because that is not least European security we're talking about, but it is also world security. Now, the important question now, I believe, is why is a challenge? Why is the language and the words about nationalism and protectionism more common today than, let's say, 5-10 years ago? Why? And I believe it has to do basically with mistrust and disbelief among too many people that feel that they are not on board on the future project. We have too wide gaps, too much inequality in our world, too many, although we have decreased poverty, we have more boys and girls in school than ever before, but still there is a sense in many parts of the world that this is not functioning, that something is out of control. Also due to the technology, the new business models, the new supply chains all over the world, all of a sudden also an industry worker in Sweden can feel, well, I'm threatened also because I do not know what will happen next year. So it's about mistrust and loss of control. And this is also, I mean, when national politicians are faced with that from the voters, the easy, short-sighted answer is to say, well, we will protect our country, that's all I'm going to do, because that will be the fastest answer to a voter that is concerned by this. And it's short-sighted because it is the wrong answer, but it's the easy answer. And we need to be able to show leadership and say, well, the right answer to that concern of yours is that we need to cooperate more. We need to do the right thing within our country, of course, employment, social security and everything, but we need to cooperate all over the world because if African countries are doing well, it's good for Sweden. If India is doing well, it's good for Sweden, and vice versa. So I think that is the most important issue now, to understand why we have this and to act in such a way that people will have increased confidence in the multilateral system. Let me just finish with one example. You mentioned it, the global deal. I've been active as a trade unionist for many years, at the local level, at the national level. And one thing that I've learned is that if workers can feel that they participate in the development, that increases trust. That increases trust for the future as well. And we cannot impose one model on the whole world, but I think the social dialogue is crucial in this moment to make sure that the partners on the labor market, politicians, civil society, civil organizations, taking part in different ways, of course. In one way in India, another way in Sweden, but take part in discussing the future so that we can start the most important task that we have ahead of us now, and that is how do we develop and build common security. Common security is a key word now. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the opportunity to remind the audience that the Paris Peace Forum really is about the 120 projects and initiatives and solutions that are presented just behind the Agora in the space of solutions. The global deal is one, but we have projects that are normative. We have solutions that are more, let's say, capacity building. And in this realm of inequalities and fair repartition, we have several projects, including one, for example, that provides an index of how added value is distributed in different large companies to show those who redistribute and those who tend to direct all revenues to shareholders, and also index that give us indications on the corporate social responsibility and the way these large companies are dealing with this responsibility. So I will invite all of you to of course, visit these stands, because these projects, we want to help them make a step forward. Let me get to a question which would seem perhaps like a solution to this crisis of multilateralism, and perhaps it could be first asked to you, Mr. President, which is, Mr. Chair, which is the question of regionalism. How do you see regionalism as perhaps a backup of global multilateralism? How do the two combine? Is regionalism, especially in Africa, especially at the African Union, a way to compensate for the shortcomings of the global multilateral institutions, or are things different than what I'm describing?
Je crois qu'il n'y a pas d'incompatibilité. Au contraire, il y a une complémentarité.
Le micro. Sorry.
Je disais qu'il n'y a pas d'incompatibilité. Au contraire, il y a même complémentarité, et cela est prévu même dans la charte des Nations Unies, notamment en son chapitre 8. Les organisations régionales traitent des questions régionales, et je crois qu'elles sont un des éléments du multilatéralisme de façon globale. Mais M. Weiss, on ne peut pas parler d'un multilatéralisme véritable si les questions de justice et d'équité ne sont pas posées. Je dirais même que c'est une question morale. Nous sommes à Paris, nous sommes à la veille du 70e anniversaire de la Déclaration des droits de l'homme. Cette question se pose. Elle se pose tout crûment, si je peux m'exprimer ici. Il faut, à mon sens, sur des questions essentielles. La migration. Je sais que cette question a une très forte charge émotionnelle, notamment en Europe, concernant ses rapports avec l'Afrique. Mais très souvent, on prend des mesures qui ne sont pas une solution. On ne règle pas un problème en traitant ses conséquences sans se poser les causes et les raisons. La jeunesse africaine n'a pas vocation à venir en Europe. Nous assumons notre part de responsabilité et nous le reconnaissons. Sur des questions de cette nature, il y a nécessité de les discuter dans un cadre global. J'espère, nous avons un rendez-vous en décembre à Marrakech sur le compact migration. J'espère que l'ensemble de la communauté internationale va définir des règles qui seront exécutées par tout le monde. Deuxièmement, les questions climatiques. Un continent comme l'Afrique, qui ne pollue pas, mais qui connaît la sécheresse, la déforestation et la désertification. Ça, ce sont des manifestations qui sont très claires. Des engagements importants ont été pris ici à Paris, dans le cadre du COP21. Mais jusqu'à là, les fonds verts, je crois que nous sommes arrivés à une phase où les discours, les incantations ne suffisent pas. Il y a péril en la demeure et dans différents domaines. Comme l'a dit quelqu'un, nous sommes face à une réalité en charge d'un destin. Il faut agir et il faut agir maintenant. Nous, en Afrique, en tant qu'Union africaine, nous sommes conscients de notre part de responsabilité. Nous agissons d'ailleurs en complémentarité avec les Nations Unies. On a signé 2 accords sur la paix, un accord cadre sur la paix et la sécurité en avril 2017, un autre accord en janvier de cette année sur les questions de développement. Donc nous travaillons en parfaite harmonie. Nous avons fait la même chose avec l'Union européenne. Nous avons signé en mai dernier un accord cadre sur les questions de paix et de sécurité. Donc nous abordons les choses de manière positive. Je pense que les regroupements régionaux doivent participer entièrement à l'objectif ultime qui est celui du multilatéralisme. Malheureusement, nous voyons des tendances qui nous inquiètent. Et il faut agir vite.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur le Vice President, go ahead.
Regionalism, they are not opposite, what you call, groupings. They can be complementary to each other. That is the need of Dawa. If regionalism is good, taking care of the nation, its own interest, is really good. If that is supplementary to multilateralism, and if it is complementary to multilateralism, and if there is nothing incoherent to multilateralism, nothing wrong in pursuing nationalism. First of all, you are answerable to your people. You have to take care of their basic needs. You focus on that. And for that, first of all, you bring peace within your country, within your region. For that, you have to make progress. Peace is prerequisite for progress. If there is progress, there will be more peace. So for that also, you have to take care to see that the forces which come in the way of progress, they have to be tackled effectively, like terrorism, extremism. All these aspects has to be taken care, because if there is a tension, you cannot have attention towards development. So develop, distribute, make people happy, and also share it with others. That is the broad philosophy which I am trying to impress upon everybody is. So these two, multilateralism and regionalism, they are complementary to each other. They are not opposite political poles or ideological poles. That's one point I want to make. And secondly, as long as you follow the international laws, WTO, United Nations, or United Nations Security Council, or the other organizations that are there, many organs are there. Whatever is agreed upon, everyone must keep that in mind. And whatever programs you make or policies you formulate within our country, they should be in tune with that larger objective. After all, we are all living in now, the world is opened up. As I said, you can't live in isolation. You are living in an era of LPG, according to me. Liberalization, privatization, globalization. Foreign direct investment also is allowed now, everywhere. And you are opening up, and you are also allowing private sector. You need to take care to see that you follow international norms and certain well-laid principles. If you do that, I don't think there will be any conflict and there won't be any contradiction and what we are talking about, multilateralism and regionalism or nationalism, whatever it is. Only thing is, if you have the interest of the common good, that is okay. But if you have the feeling of that you should conquer everything, you should rule over everybody, that's how this, and you have that ego problem, how this world war, all these things have happened. We need not go in depth into history. The fact is, somebody wanted to conquer and rule everything. My suggestion is, first take care of your people, make them happy, and then think about the neighbors also. That should be the change that has to come in the mindset. For that, the multilateral bodies should function more effectively, caution, counsel from time to time, and necessary action also. As I was telling about the way to solve your own problems, there is a democracy, which is an acceptable system. And everybody has to follow democratic system. And if you respect democracy and then resolve it through discussion, debate, and take a decision, many of these problems can be solved. As I said, I come back, poverty alleviation, one, and then education, minimum education at least to start with, and then ending gender discrimination. Women constitute 50% of the population. You don't give them their due. It's not a mercy or charity. After all, they are also human beings. They have got equal right. If you give them an opportunity, they will also definitely excel. And then climate change is another challenge. For climate change, countries which are contributing more to the climate degradation, they have a greater responsibility. They have a greater responsibility. So if you take that and convert this into a social movement, so that's why I say the present generation must think in terms of loving the nature and living with the nature. Love and live with the nature. Nature, culture, together for better future. If you have that concept, then you can really progress well and many of these problems can be resolved.
Merci. Merci beaucoup pour cette intervention et cette formule. Madame Espinosa, de votre point de vue, donc on évoquait l'articulation nécessaire entre le multilatéralisme global, celui de l'ONU et les institutions régionales. De votre point de vue à l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies, comment est-ce qu'elles se combinent et comment est-ce qu'elles peuvent, disons, parvenir à régler nos problèmes plus efficacement?
Oui, bon, d'abord, merci par cette question parce que je crois qu'elle est très importante. Et si vous permettez, je veux répondre en anglais.
Of course.
Juste pour utiliser un peu, je vais commencer par dire que je suis complètement d'accord qu'il faut rebuild trust. I wanted to start by very important statement made by the Prime Minister of Sweden. Rebuild trust, but the only way to build trust and trust in multilateral institutions is about delivering better and adapting to new realities. I have chosen the theme for my presidency this year is to make the United Nations more relevant to all people, which means to bring the United Nations closer to the people and the people closer to the organization. And I think that there are three elements. First of all, I have to say that, yes, I do think that regional organizations have a very important role to play in the multilateral system. They are part of the multilateral system. And I think that for a healthy and efficient multilateralism, we need also very strong and powerful regional organizations. I think the African Union is the perfect example. The 2063 Développement Durable Agenda, it's extremely important. The connection between the European Union, the African Union, CELAC in Latin America and the Caribbean as seeds that have to be harvested under the umbrella of the United Nations, it's perfectly compatible and mutually reinforcing to start. And then on the second question, to make the United Nations more relevant. Perhaps to simplify, I will touch on 3 points very quickly. The first issue is that we are in the process, and I'm pushing very hard for that, of revitalizing the General Assembly. The United Nations General Assembly is the most democratic body of the multilateral system. It is an organ, it is the Parliament of Humanity where 193 states are represented. We all sit in the same seats. We all have the same microphones to speak, and we all have the same buttons to vote. And we need to make sure that the General Assembly its authority is fully respected, the will and desire of member states is fully represented, and we deliver in a more efficient manner. We are in the process of rethinking our own working methods, and we need to deliver better. I use often an acronym in New York. I think they're a little tired of that acronym, but it's the DARE acronym. DARE, doing things differently and better. DARE as for delivery, accountability, relevance, and efficiency. The second issue I wanted to touch upon is the reform of the United Nations. The Secretary General mentioned very briefly the reform process. I think that we we have to support the Secretary General in implementing as soon as possible the reform. It's the structural reform, and if you look at it closely, it really means one simple thing: improving the working methods of the organization, making it more efficient, applying the principle of decentralization and subsidiarity. We need to work towards that. So that's the second element. And the third element, and very important, the reform of the Security Council. I think you all mentioned that very fact. Of course, as President of the General Assembly, I don't have a position myself, but I can tell you that there is a diversity of positions within the House. My role is to make sure that these different views and positions are factored in a position that would enable that the Security Council would be able to deliver better and perhaps to represent current times. So I would just leave it there, and so we can continue the dialogue.
Thank you. Prime Minister Le Pen, what does Europe do to bolster the UN system and multilateralism in general?
First, I mean, the regions are a complement to the multilateral system. We need to see all these levels, the local communities, the national level, the regions, and the multilateral. So all these are relevant parts of this whole system. So, I mean, the EU acts also on the basis of the United Nations Charter, of course. We need to take that into consideration. When we, for example, discuss the migration issue, one of the strongest arguments that I can present is that we're right now also discussing a reform, a new migration policy at the global level that we need to adhere to. We need to respect the international law and what we have decided at the United Nations. So I think regions are complements, but the answer is, the question is very valid because it depends on how you act. If you develop regional organizations just to look into your own interest in a very short-sighted way and regard other regions, other parts of the world as just competitors or enemies, well, that's the wrong development. But we support the cooperation between United Nations and the African Union. It's very important. I have myself attended 3 African Union meetings, and I appreciate very much the vision that you have, the 2063 vision. It's a strong one. I would like to look into it more myself because, and I know that EU and AU is also cooperating. So we have cooperations between regional organizations, between the regions and the United Nations, between the regions and the different nations. So let me just conclude by saying all this is structures, infrastructures, but what we need is to do more to be more clear about what the Vice President was mentioning. For example, equality. How do we measure now that equality increases? Today we have a situation where I believe some 15 individuals own as much as 50% of the poorest part of the world population. 15 people own equals, their asset equals to 50% of the world population. That is absurd. So we need to bring equality, progress, development, but also peace, the peace issue, so that we combine these because these belong together. And that is what we need to do, whether we talk on the global level, the regional level, or the national level.
Thank you. Please.
I have an important point to make.
Oh, go ahead. Good.
As you have started in the beginning, the Prime Minister also was saying, few people holding the entire wealth. Inclusive development is the way forward. And you must take care. There are a lot of regional success stories. You have to take clue from them. And you have success stories. In Bangladesh, you have some success stories. India, you have some success stories of self-help group movement of women's empowerment. And then latest now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has taken a new initiative of Jana Dhana. That means everybody should have a bank account, access to bank account. And he has opened in very short term some 36 crore bank accounts. So the access to the wealth, access to the credit, and access to the resources. Another point, important point, which you mentioned in the beginning, on which this accumulation of wealth through illegal means. So that has to be taken care, and multilateral forums should take note of it and make all the nations to take care to see that you earn money there by legal or illegal methods and then store money in some other country. What do you call it, tax havens? We have to take care of it. It is the duty of the multilateral forums to take care of that aspect. Every nation must be willing to exchange information with each other. One. Secondly, people commit economic crimes there. Economic fugitives, you call. You loot there, and then you run away. You take shelter in some other country, and then take shelter under their rules. That should not be allowed. There has to be understanding if you want to have a proper, healthy economy, proper growth. You need to follow certain norms, including ethics and also values. If that is the case, then every country must be willing to hand over the economic fugitives who looted that country or who cheated that country or who evaded tax and then came running here. So for that also, bringing everybody into tax net and making system more transparent and then making people more accountable, this will go a long way in strengthening the multilateral process.
I'm happy you're mentioning that because, as I mentioned, once again, the Paris Peace Forum really is about solutions. And just over there in the space of solutions, you have, for example, a project put forward by the OECD that they are looking at developing, which is called Tax Inspectors Without Borders, to strengthen the fiscal systems of and fiscal inspection of countries. Reflecting on what you said about the African Union and the EU, there's the EU-AU youth group that has a project which is presented here, which is a model of cooperation between the two regional organizations. So once again, I invite the public to really pay attention to the ideas and initiatives that are launched here because they have a lot of resonance with our debate tonight. We are close to the end of our panel, and I will ask you in very brief words, if you could, to give me, each of you, one solution or one thing, perhaps coming from Africa, Europe, and the Americas, etc., that seem to you a good solution or a good initiative to bolster multilateralism in a time of crisis. And if you could share with us that idea and tell us that way forward and describe it in very few words, I would appreciate it. Could we start with you, Mrs. Espinosa?
Sure. Merci beaucoup.
N'oubliez pas le micro.
I would say perhaps two things. One, that I am an optimist, and I see every challenge as an opportunity. And I think that we have a golden opportunity to make the United Nations and multilateralism work for the people in need, basically. And the way to do it is through the three aspects that I mentioned before. But perhaps the second issue, very important, is sometimes we think that we are reinventing the wheel. In Spanish, we say inventar el agua tibia, no? Reinventer l'eau tiède. And it is not necessary. What I would just urge all leaders of the world is to recommit to the principles of the UN Charter. To read the Charter once again, we the peoples. And I think it's all there in a way, in a new time with new challenges. But yet again, the multilateralism is not an option. It's a survival need.
Thank you. Rereading the Charter. Mr. Prime Minister, what would be the solution or the way forward that you would advocate?
Well, thank you. First, I don't think there is one simple solution, but if one ingredient that I mentioned when in my first address is the dialogue. I think it's crucial to develop a social dialogue at the national level, at the regional level, at the global level, so that we live in the world and an economy that is constantly changing. And that is one of the reasons why people feel mistrust. We do not know exactly what the future would look like. and none of us does. But if we have a dialogue and a trust in one another that we will do this together, no matter what happens over there, we will do this in a good way. So I mean that the social dialogue is crucial. It is not the answer, not the only one, but the social dialogue is important.
Thank you. So rereading the Charter, social dialogue. Mr. Vice President, what would be the thing that you would put forward in a concluding?
Coming together, discussing together, acting together effectively. That is the only way forward.
Okay. Thank you. Cher Monsieur Faki, c'est vous qui concluez cette session ce soir. Qu'est-ce que vous voudriez mettre en avant dans les solutions venant d'Afrique ou d'ailleurs pour le multilatéralisme?
Le Premier ministre de Suède nous disait tout à l'heure que 15 personnes détiennent la moitié de la richesse. Je ne pousserai pas la ringardise au point de demander une redistribution de la richesse, mais je demanderai l'équité et la justice, sur le plan économique, sur le plan politique. Je crois que le monde a changé. Et il faut que le multilatéralisme ait un contenu qui convainque l'ensemble de l'humanité. C'est une attente légitime.
Merci beaucoup. Et bien sur ces paroles fortes, je conclus cette session en vous remerciant beaucoup d'y avoir participé. Et nous allons laisser la place maintenant à un deuxième dialogue qui est le dialogue des organisations internationales sur la gouvernance mondiale. Bonsoir.